Hi, I'm Michael for To the Top Tutoring, and welcome to our very first edition of Things I Know Now That I Wish I Knew Before. I suppose since it's our first installment, we require a bit of an introduction. Having gone through high school, I wouldn't say it was the hardest thing in the world, but there are definitely things that I wish I could have done or could have started doing early on that I really think would have saved a lot of time, a lot of effort, and maybe even a lot of frustration. And so this video series is just that. For anyone who's interested, maybe you're just starting high school, maybe you're just looking to improve, I'll be giving you advice, my personal advice, on how I think you can really get up to that next level. And so, today the topic is regarding note-taking. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is not just note-taking in general, but really how to get the most value out of your notes that you do take. And so my first piece of advice, the first piece of advice I have to give is simply to take notes. Just make notes. Now, when I say to make notes, this is what I mean, and this is what I think personally goes the furthest in terms of value. What I like to do is to make daily notes on the lesson, even if there are worksheets provided, and even if these worksheets summarize the notes and tell you the concepts that you need to know. I'll give you an example. Taking math, for example, we were given course packs, which were just large stacks of paper, and every single day we would take a few pages out and use those pages as the lesson for the day. Even provided with these, I definitely recommend making your own notes of the concepts and of the lessons of that day, every single day. Why is that? Well, that's a good question. The utility of doing this isn't very short-term, but long-term oriented, and that's because when you're studying for the unit test, and you're trying to recall lessons that you've learned from maybe a few weeks ago, having these notes is extremely helpful. It helps even more when you're studying for final exams, where the first few units are distant, and having these notes provide a refresher of what you need to know. Whether it's a quiz, a test, or an exam, making daily notes serves the extra role of essentially being a list of all the concepts that you need to know for that assessment and for the course as a whole. Ultimately, it's a bit more work to make daily notes, but even then, it's not that much more work, is it? In the long term, it's more than worth it, absolutely. In my opinion, this is most helpful for more content-oriented subjects, and what I mean by that is things such as math, the sciences, maybe even history. And also, it's useful for classes on languages that are not your first language. For example, I learned French. Because of how differently we learn a second language compared to a first, making notes on having an organized note binder on the grammar, on the conjugations of sentence types, etc., is very useful. So apart from that, what I've heard people say is that you should take time every weekend to go over the concepts that you've acquired during the week, the new lessons you've learned, and things that you're not too sure about. Personally, I'm not a big believer of this, but I think you can be fine without it. But I definitely don't think it hurts to do this, to just take some time, maybe a few hours over the weekend, just to go over what you've written down over the course of the week. With more challenging subjects, concepts you might not have been 100% with, you can look over. After you look over the week's work, any concepts you're not familiar with can come up as questions on Monday, the following Monday, in class. So that about wraps things up. I hope you found this at least slightly helpful, and if you have any comments or questions, just drop one off below. I'll try my best to answer them. So until next time, have a great day.